book of the Pentateuch. What is the Pentateuch? First 5 books of the Bible. Those of us who know our prefixes are going, Andrew, Penta, 5, right? Pentateuch is the first 5. It's often called the Torah. In the Jewish canon, it is the earliest, oldest material, most canonical material. So the wisdom sayings, the Proverbs, the Psalms, Job and Jonah and the prophets are all in some ways an elaboration on what exists in the Torah. And for the most part, like we know those are like Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and Deuteronomy and that other one in the middle. Numbers. But it has some provocative stories, and frankly, I kind of wish I could preach 3 weeks on this text alone. I know that you don't, but I do. I wish that I could preach for 3 weeks today on this text alone. But it's a fascinating moment that really honestly speaks to a lot of human behavior. You gotta love that. So here are the people in a quick how we get to this story. The people are languishing in, if not full-on slavery, certainly indentured servitude in Egypt. They are crying out for rescue. They are crying out for emancipation. And we meet that story in Exodus with this time of, Pharaoh has forgotten Joseph and that the Hebrew people were so plentiful they were a threat. So Pharaoh has made them more and more oppressed to turn them into a working class that can't get anywhere. And when they start to cry out about their conditions, God says, I hear my people's cry. And he goes and he finds Moses, who we know to have been a Hebrew who grew up in Pharaoh's household until that oppression got to him, and he kills an Egyptian guard, and he goes and flees into the wilderness to hide from responsibility and his torn identity. God finds him, forces him, deeply encourages, creates an invitational opportunity for leadership, and Moses takes it and steps in to go rescue his people. So then, 10 plagues, then they get out. You should think, okay, they get through, they do the whole Red Sea thing, and they are home free, right? And that's how people are. They're so grateful that you gave them what they wanted, they just sit around and bask in gratitude. No, you're laughing. So they get there, and it turns out there's the whole story about there be giants there. They're not sure they can make it to the promised land. They end up wandering around in the wilderness, unable to find home. They're hungry, right? And what does God provide them for food? Manna. You already know that. Does someone out there know what manna means? What is it? Have you ever been served what is it? I mean, I know that we say like, oh, it's so beautiful. Bread just formed on the rocks overnight. And they went out and they scooped up this beautiful baked bread, and they ate it, and they were fed in the wilderness. No, that's not what happens. They like scrape up some weird fungus-looking stuff that they're like, what is it? And they're like, well, maybe if you put it in a pot with some water and call it soup. Nope, it's still what is it? And they've been eating what is it for a long time, and they're done with it, right? And so they start basking in the memory of what was. And I love that part the best. Oh, do you remember the meat in Egypt? Do you remember the cucumbers? And I don't know, have your kids ever said to you, do you remember the leeks and the onions? Okay, maybe you have strange kids. I don't know. But I love that part, and I love the illustrativeness of it, because they're just, this is gross, and we're done with it. And they start complaining about me and what's been done to me and what's wrong with me. And then Moses kind of catches the disease. And so I love this part. Okay, well, God's mad at them. So God's like lighting random fires, a piece of the text that's probably hard to hear on this week in which Los Angeles is burning. So God is unnecessarily acting out God's frustration with the children. I don't care. You deal with them. I'm done. I'm just driving. You ever said something like that? All right, and then Moses is done too now. Everyone is just done, right? Moses is like, I don't know what I did to make you mad at me, God, but you made me be their pastor? So I like to joke that I joked at First Light, this is a pastor's favorite text. Pastors complain about their congregations who complain. Now, I don't get that because my congregation doesn't ever complain. My congregation is sweet-natured, beautiful people. You should meet them someday. But so now everybody is upset. And Moses is being blamed by the people, and Moses is blaming God, and God's blaming the people. And I think God, when Moses turns to God and says, you have made these people be a burden to me, I think God has an epiphany. I think God is the first person in this story to choose to act a different way. Let me put a pin in that part of the story. About 15 years ago, I went to a discipleship workshop. My job at that time was the associate pastor of discipleship. I was doing my doctoral work on discipleship, so I was just lapping up all the different ways people wanted to talk about discipleship. So I went to this discipleship workshop that was hosted at Eckerd College. It didn't hurt that it was a discipleship workshop on the Gulf of Mexico. So I'm there, and we're doing this worksheet, and I wish I could remember how this facilitator took us through this worksheet, because we had to write down things like our core values. And one of my core values is that the church, the community of faith, the body of Christ, bears the responsibility for its life together, that we understand what we're doing here to be active citizenship and responsibility. And so, oh yeah, I love that. Oh man, that's so beautiful. I'm so smart. I'm so faithful. I'm so good. So he takes us through a couple steps, and then he makes us write a thing down. And he says, and that thing you just wrote down is how you sabotage yourself. And I look down. In all my middle childness, I have written down, I hate to be a burden to people, so I don't ask people to do anything. I just do it all myself. Oh, I can't swear here, but in my head, maybe I had a four-letter word moment. Oh, I do that, don't I? My core value that we're all sharing responsibility together. Another core value that I make sure that no one thinks of me as like, oh my gosh, here comes Andrew, run the other way. That I just make people's life easier by doing it all and not asking anything of them. I think, friends, God has that epiphany. I think Moses accidentally took God through that spreadsheet. And God had this epiphany. Oh, everybody's sitting around waiting for someone else to do the work. I'm sitting here waiting for them to just get it. And I get tired of it, so then I just do it all. Because, I'm God. Not me. Just so we're clear. Moses is running around being like, these people are such a burden to me. I can't do everything for them, except I kind of love that they love that I'm the leader, so I do all the things. And the people are like, free us, feed us, do all the things for us. And so we have this weird dysfunctional group where it turns out everybody is their own problem. Have you ever been your own problem? I have. I've already been there. I've done that. Guess what? You know how many times I've had to relearn that epiphany? I think I'm on 1,325 times. In fact, I remember a time not that long ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago. It's hard to tell because COVID was one long 4-year year for me, but I think it was like 5 years ago. And I came out of a meeting here, and Kathy pulls me aside and says, Andrew, every time you get in a meeting, you do this. So who would like to make that phone call? Okay, I'll do it. Who would like to make sure that we write up minutes of this meeting? Okay, I'll do it. You don't wait for anyone to have a chance to offer to answer the question. I'm like, oh, I did this again, didn't I? I've had to relearn that lesson 1,124 times, and probably a couple of you will reteach me that lesson sometime soon. And I think all of these characters are getting into this moment where their angst is building up because they're all waiting for someone else to do the work. Or they're Moses and they're all trying to do all the work themselves. Sometimes our core values, our gut instincts tell us to do 2 different things at once, and we have to pick which one is the right thing. Do I not be a burden? Do I help this place do shared ministry? Do I get to be the leader? Do I take time to equip other people to be the leader? Do I get to be their God? Or do I help make them be my people? Do I get saved? Or do I act in my story of emancipation? We get to this crossroad, and I think this crossroad teaches us that a lot of times we don't know what it is we want. And when we get it, we don't like it. And we have to kind of get moved outside of ourselves. And that is the gift of community. The gift of realizing that all of our eyes face forward. And in order to see myself, I need you to be my mirror. And in order for you to see yourself, you need the person sitting next to you or across from you or me. And Moses gets told by God, oh, I see what's wrong again. You need to get a group of people and you need to share the job together. And that will help pull them out of their experience of I'm waiting to be saved, and that will help you set aside the ego of feeling like you've got to do it all. And maybe that will help me remember that my job is to get you to become a co-creator with me of this community of grace and freedom and love. Something God has never given up on. No matter how many times God goes, they still don't get it. For such a time as this moment may just be the recognition that we are our problem and we need to get over ourselves and step in to the communal work of God's kingdom. This is the word of the Lord.